Hey Nathan, my name is Andy Detterman. I was just speaking to your father um, about something that had happened the past week. He had told me an incident where he had come home, and I was up here at an interview at his work, just sharing, and he had asked me how I got in the wheelchair, and I told him it's because I was drinking and driving and taking pills. And when he had opened up to me after about the incident that happened last week, he had asked me to share with you, and it's always on my heart to share. And I just want you to know, I love you and I care about you, and I wouldn't be sitting here telling you this unless I did. And just for a perspective of, yeah, I got into my accident because I was drinking and driving and taking pills, but it wasn't always like that. I grew up in the church. I knew right from wrong, and influence was a big catalyst that changed my life because I wanted to go do my own thing, but I always knew that I would never do drugs and I would never drink. I wanted to go live my own life, but I knew I'd never do that. It wasn't even on the menu. And through influence, I found myself having different thoughts, and my ideology changed, and the things I believed started changing. And through curiosity, I found myself doing drugs, and through curiosity, I found myself drinking. And a year later, partying and going to the club. And 6 months later, after I graduated, that's when I got in my car accident. This all happened within 3 years of my life. But what the biggest part of my story is, when I was smoking and drinking regularly as a senior in high school, I had bought a bottle and went over to my friend's house. My friend Patrick, Keenan, and Derek. Patrick and Derek were over there. I'd called him up and he told me, hey, yeah, come over. They didn't know I had a bottle. They didn't do any of this type of stuff in their life. And I went over to their house, and I had a bottle of tequila, and I put it in front of them, and they all started mixing drinks. They decided to drink that day. Keenan came over, and he didn't want any part of it. He was like, no, man, I don't do that kind of stuff. And so, we ended up kicking him out of the house and saying, if you're not going to drink with us, you can leave. And we thought it was the funniest thing we ever did. The very next week, ironically, a man in a wheelchair came and spoke to our basketball team. Keenan went to a different high school at the time before he transferred the very next year. But Patrick, Derek, and we all played varsity basketball together, and a man in a wheelchair came and spoke to us, and he told us, if you're partying, you're doing drugs, you're drinking, these things, and you're smoking weed, these things can happen to you, because this will happen to me. And, I took it lightly, and Patrick took it lightly, and Derek took it lightly. We all began drinking they all began drinking regularly with me after that. And 2 months later, a month later, Keenan started drinking with us. He didn't want to get left out. And through influence, he came in, and they all came into that. I had influenced them. I had been influenced, and then they came in on my influence. And what it was is, 2 months later, I got a phone call, and they wanted to start smoking weed. Patrick and Keenan did. So we started smoking. We all started smoking together. And I graduated 2 or 3 months later. And then 2 months later, I got a call on October 10th. I was at a party, and I'd been to a football game that Keenan and Patrick were supposed to meet me at, but they never made it. Keenan, Patrick, and Derek were supposed to meet me at, but they never made it. And I'm at this party. I get a call from Keenan, Keenan's older sister, Chelsea. I was good friends with her, and she told me, Andy, Patrick, Keenan, and Derek, they got into a car accident, and Keenan's dead. And it changed my life, and that's the biggest part of my testimony, because at that moment, I realized this isn't what life's about. And it took my friend dying to figure that out. But not only that, my friend Patrick, he went to prison for 14 years for driving in that car under the influence of alcohol. And I'm just telling you all this to put into perspective what could happen if you continue to go out and do these things. Because not only did it change their lives, but it changed my life, and I really blamed myself for the influence that I was in their life. And at that moment, I realized I said I would never do drugs and I'd never drink. But I went back to church, and I began to seek the Lord and change my life. But I'd been so lost in all those things, I just couldn't find my way back. I just wasn't able to find my way back. And one thing I didn't give up was my friends. I just still wanted to hang out with certain people. And by doing so, I fell back into the drugs. I fell back into the alcohol. And 2 weeks from my accident, I started taking pills for the first time in my life, and a week later, I found myself drinking again, and 3 nights later, that's when I mixed them both in the same night, and I got in my car accident, which left me in this wheelchair that you see me in now. And I just want you to know, man, bad things happen when we live a reckless lifestyle, and we're all called to live righteously, exercising self-control, because there will be a judgment day. And I just want you to know, man, you are very fortunate, man. You are blessed to be alive after driving home and as intoxicated as you were. The Lord is definitely over your shoulder that night, and I fully believe that. And that just shows how good God is, how faithful He is. Because not only could you be in a wheelchair like me, you could also be dead like Keenan, or you can be facing prison time for killing somebody else like Patrick. And I say all that to say this, the guy in a wheelchair who came and spoke to me, he was living proof of what can happen to you, and I became living proof of the living proof, trying to stop the story from going on any farther. But this is just for you, man. You're the only one that can change that, and the decision starts right now. And if whatever you need in your life to do that, the Bible talks about we should not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. We should have more. Our majority of our friends needs to be Christian friends, and you need to have that accountability. You need to put accountability in your life, and I'm just telling you this to pour back into your life, man, because God's always been faithful to me, so I'm trying to be faithful to Him, and just let you know, things can happen if we don't live righteously and seeking the Lord. And I think about my friend Keenan. I think about how friends became the biggest thing in my life, and I just ask you, who are you setting an example for? Because everybody looks up to somebody, and Keenan and Patrick, they looked up to me, and I led them astray. And Keenan's dead because of that, and that took a lot. That took a lot for me to bear, and I had a lot of guilt for a long time. But friends were the most important thing in my life, and I didn't realize that the life I was living, I was letting my friends down every single day. And because of that, my friends got in an accident. And my story's not big because of me. Because of what happened to me. My story's so big because of what happened with my friends. And like I said earlier, I care about you, man, and I love you. And I would even call you my friend, even though we've never even met each other. And I wouldn't want anything to happen to you. So I just ask you, man, just to take a couple steps back and reevaluate your life, and just say, are there things I need to change in my life? Yes. Let's get rid of those things. Do I have some friends that I need to get rid of? They're over here doing this, they're over there doing that. Do I really need to be hanging out with them? No. Why should those friends that are influencing you wrongly affect your future or end your future in some cases? But why should they be affecting your future when you probably years from now, if you go hanging out with them, you'll just wonder what you were ever doing hanging out with them in the first place, like I wondered why I was ever doing, in my years in high school, that, that brought me through all the pain and the heartache that I went through. And I just ask you to take a couple steps back and just be reasonable, man, and just say, knowing the grace of God that was on your life just last week, driving home that intoxicated. Because I already know the night of my accident, I was just feeling good, man. I took one pill. I took one pill, 1.5 of this pill, just to start feeling good. And I'd have just a couple of drinks just so I was feeling good, man. I wasn't trash. I wasn't torn up. I just lost focus when I was driving, putting music on in my iPod. And so just to know how under the influence you were, and that you actually made it home. You had abundant grace of God in your life. You had, that's just God's goodness and His faithfulness. And I just want to ask you to take a couple steps back and just be reasonable and say, what do I need to do, to fix this?
Thank you, Andy.